Hello, Reese from the Point Music Podcast thingy. Back again with another podcast. Like I said, getting back to the swing of things. This is good. Feeling re-energized and stuff. This time around, we got Mark, guitarist and producer for Inertia, Sydney band, that are kicking goals and taking names and kicking ass. Absolutely love their debut album, which is Second Shadow, and they're taking it on tour. They just wrapped up a tour with In Heart's Wake. Massive regional one. So if you happen to go to In Heart's Wake, you more than likely would have seen them. Yep. Anyway, all that information is in the podcast. We'll talk about them. So strap in and enjoy this chat. I do give you a heads up. The connection was a little bit wonky, and I'm gonna have to do some clever editing. So yeah, couldn't help that. Sorry, but do enjoy this chat with Mark from Inertia, ladies and gentlemen, people of all sorts. And rolling. Hello, Mark from Inertia. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Not too bad for a Monday night. It's a bit sticky and sweaty up in this Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast. Not even Sunshine Coast. Halfway between Brisbane and Sunshine Coast area. You're down in Sydney, aren't you?
Yeah, Sydney. Yeah, weather's been pretty warm here too, though. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It must be an all-round thing of catching up for that stupid weather we had last 2 weeks. Anyway, I hate talking about weather. You guys have got a massive freaking tour coming up, but also basically because you released the debut album, Second Shadow, late last year. So now you're out on the run of it. So that's what we are going to talk about today. Firstly, it's been a while since I've had to do a deep dive into some metal, but I come from a heavy background, so I always appreciate that. Great album.
Oh man, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was our first album, so it was hard to know how it was going to go, but I think we're all happy with it and happy with the response. Enough people seem to like it, so
yeah, it's the whole smooth metal thing, which is basically what's been coined to market you guys. So I would lump that in with the new sort of more what I would deem pop friendly metal, which is not in a derogatory term at all for the metalheads out there. It's basically like you can thank the lights. I think Bring Me the Horizon one, the first one's to sort of bring that in, but then Bad Omens and obviously Sleep Token conquering the world with a similar sort of vibe. Would I be right?
Yeah, definitely. Like we're not too shy about it, but we're using low tunings, we're using breakdowns, all that kind of stuff. Like we're keeping it aggressive, but we do like our poppy hooks and stuff like that as well. It's just what we like listening to. It's what we like making.
There's nothing wrong with the poppy hooks. I like a metalhead purist sort of turn their nose up a little bit at it, but I think it's making it more palatable for a more wider reaching audience, right?
Yeah, that's it. And it's like back in the day, even still currently, he'll still listen to a whole lot of pop music, and we all have our inspirations as we grow up, and that's fun. And then we just put that together with heavy music, and kind of put all our influences together, and this is what we seem to like doing.
So the progress of creating something like this, because there's so many different elements in this type of metal, where does it start?
Yeah, it's always instrumentals. So we get a bit of a skeleton. Might start with a riff, might start with a chord progression, or some kind of just overall mood that we want to go for. Even just a tempo, like just to see how things can groove along. We structure it out so we kind of have a roadmap for where the song wants to go, and then we'll think about what we want to write vocals about in terms of vocals should sound, what the theme or subject matter should be, and we all have put our 2 cents in there, and in actually creating it, I produce our music as well. So cool. We come here and end up doing a lot of writing and recording, and then I put it all together and mix it and make it sound nice. So, and the album took about probably about a year to put together.
Well, that was what I was going to ask.
So it was a bit of a journey.
But that a year to do an album like that is not really, in the scheme of things, is not really that long.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of getting all the core elements of it and getting it recorded. Yeah, I want to say about a year. And yeah, again, our first album, we didn't really know how it was going to go. There were definitely, some roller coaster moments where
It always
we were
is.
just like, oh, is this any good? Yeah, exactly. Like another day where we're like, yeah, no, you know what? I actually do like it. So yeah, it's one of those roller coaster, kind of projects.
Now, looking at Julian's lyrics and that, is there some kind of like concept behind like a major sort of concept piece that Julian's worked around lyrically for this?
Uh, in terms of the whole album, I don't want to say that there's one particular theme in terms of lyrics. So we all do kind of have a chat about what each song should be lyrically.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, certain members will come to the table with almost a full song or at least a couple of sections all good to go. Like I know I've got a couple that I'm pretty proud of. I know Julian has his sections that it will be all him. Um, but in terms of themes, there are a few that run throughout the album, but I don't want to say it's like a fully conceptual album. Like we have done previous EP Memoria was more conceptual. Like there's an actual narrative or story that runs through the songs.
Yeah.
Whereas this one is more each song is its own thing, and of course, because an album is kind of just like a snapshot of a certain period of time, that there are going to be reoccurring themes. But yeah, like I said, I don't want to say that it's necessarily a concept or conceptual album.
Fair. Are you still on the run of shows with In Heart's Wake, or is that finished up?
Just wrapped up like a couple of weeks ago. But that was a fun one. Yeah.
Yeah, because you made it all up to, because they play King's Beach Tavern just recently in Clounder, I'm pretty sure. Did you play that one?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did. Yeah. Yeah. There's so that was a date tour. We ended up having to miss out on Cairns and Townsville up in North Queensland because of
the cyclone
floods. Yeah. So, we ended up playing 16 shows over about 3 weeks, I think it was.
That's hectic.
So some of it kind of ends up blurring together a little bit, but it was definitely, yeah, it's very hands-on, very busy. But it was definitely fun. Got to meet a lot of new people. All the bands and people in the crews and stuff like that were all really nice to hang out with and play the shows with. So yeah, it was a good time.
It's probably a good warm-up for you guys to do your own stretch of shows coming up in April, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we were definitely kind of getting back into the swing of things this year. It was our first run of shows for the year. We just did one a couple of nights ago with Error and Silent Planet as well in Sydney. And another band from France called Resolve. That was at the Metro Theatre, so that was a good one for us. So we've played a couple of shows, and next month it's time for us to do our own thing.
Yeah, I see you're playing the Black Bear Lodge in Brisbane, man. That's gonna be an interesting one for a metal show. I can tell you that. That'd be cool.
Yeah,
like it's nice and narrow.
Yeah, I've only yes, yeah, I've only been there a couple of times. I was in another band called Faraway Stables, and actually our bass player Ollie, he was in that band for a little bit as well. And yeah, it's an interesting venue. I like it though. It's like nice, as you said, nice and narrow and pretty intimate.
Apart from the fucking loading,
a metal show there. Oh yeah, the stairs. Oh, I'm looking forward to that, but
as far as I was aware, I did hear through the grapevine they're actually changing that. That's being all renovated, but I don't quote me on that. That'd be fucking
okay.
Helpful.
Yeah,
very very helpful.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what they do. Yeah.
So being entrenched in the metal scene, there, I do want to know because, all right, it feels like with the festival scene in Australia, it's kind of doing a weird thing right now, okay? Whereas the only ones that are really, really pushing forward and doing quite well for themselves would be the heavier music festivals. But I also still feel the state of metal in Australia, even though it's strong, it still doesn't quite get the respect within the industry. Particularly, say, like from the mainstream and like the Aria's always, doing their weird thing. But we also have acceptance with Parkway Drive just doing the frickin' AFL theme, and just the popularity, good things, Knotfest, download, all that sort of stuff. So being someone that's actually entrenched in the scene, like, because I'm looking from the outside in, what are your thoughts? Do you think that there's actually going to be like a big shift or anything like that, or do you still think there's got to be that we're going to be the outsiders kind of portrayal?
Yeah, I mean, as someone on the inside, I feel like it has been doing quite well recently. Like,
Mm.
um, no, of course, in the live events, COVID was obviously a huge dip.
Yep.
Um, not just for heavy music, but like people started to come back. Um, Especially those festivals, like you mentioned, Knotfest, Good Things. It's been doing quite well. And even on this upcoming tour, we didn't really know how we were going to go with selling tickets and stuff like that. But through the heavy music industry, and the fans, especially, people seem to be interested. A good sign is the Melbourne show is already sold out, and we've got 6 weeks or so, or 5 weeks until the tour. So even for a little band like us, like people are kind of paying attention and wanting to see more live music. But as you said, maybe in areas like the Arias and mainstream radio, I do think that heavy music doesn't really get the recognition that it should. But in saying that, we're not pretending to be, the biggest pop artists ever. Like I do realize that heavy music is always going to be, somewhat of a niche. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think it's one of those things where the people who are into it are really into it. So you do get your dedicated fans and people who really want to dive deep into your music and have a solid interest in it. So in any case, we're happy to be a part of it and glad to see people really interested in it.
A promising sign is seeing Sleep Token knock off Selena Gomez in the #1 spot when Emergence came out just like on Friday.
Yeah. Bands like Sleep Token, I think you mentioned Bring the Horizon, and Emergence is another big one. To see them selling out huge venues in Australia, it's like it does show that it is thriving in its own way. Regardless of mainstream recognition. So it's something to be proud of, I think.
What's the metal scene in Sydney doing these days?
Yeah, it's good. There's been a pretty consistent stream of shows, both from Australian bands and international acts coming over. So I think it's pretty healthy. Like I said, we just played the Metro Theatre. I think it's sold out in the end.
Wicked.
With Era headlining. So it was a really good show. It was packed. It was like a good vibe throughout the night. Whereas some shows you can kind of get a bit of a thin crowd at the start, and then everyone just kind of turns up for the headliner. But I think pretty consistently we've seen people rock up early to shows, and kind of want to get the most out of the night and see the bands that are playing earlier on. So we've had a really good experience with that for the most. And we've had some really good feedback from people seeing us for the first time. Yeah,
well, that's always good, man. So you've got to basically play shows with Thornhill, Polaris, all the heavy hitters of the Australian industry, right?
No, it's been great. Polaris, we're friends with those guys being from from Sydney. We've had a huge amount of respect for them for a very long time. Gotten pretty close with some of those guys. Thornhill as well. Like, after we toured with them, their vocalist Jacob was kind enough to jump on one of our tracks that's on our album as a vocal feature. Leviathan, and that was a really good experience to have him on and do his own thing on it. It's I do think it's a really good community of Australian heavy bands that kind of know each other, and through touring, playing shows, and even just kind of respecting each other's music and work. It's cool to make some friends and connections with other Australian bands. Yeah,
definitely. Like Leviathan probably is one of my standouts on that album. I'd say that probably I think it's Far Too Gone, In Rapture, and was it the opening tracks? Is it Counterfeit? Is the opening track?
Yeah.
There is a guitar riff, your riff, 2/3 of the way through that just comes out of nowhere. It's this real snaky thing. And I was like, oh, that's sick. That got me.
Oh, nice. Yeah, is that in Counterfeit?
I think so. The first track.
Yeah. Okay. It might actually. Yeah, no. I was just going to say, on the topic of writing, like, that might have even been, if it's the same riff I'm thinking of, that might have even been written by Ollie, our bass player.
Oh, sick.
Like we all kind of like, we do a lot of writing of each other's parts. Ollie could basically, write a whole song instrumentally, and I'll just kind of, move some things around, do bits and pieces, maybe add a section or change a riff or something like that. And vice versa. Like, I'll write a song, and Ollie might be like, oh, I've got a riff for this section. It should kind of go after this other section. So yeah, we both, can flesh out a full instrumental, and then, might have some notes or changes, or, some slight tweaks on some things. And, same with vocals. Like, I get pretty involved with the vocals. I do a lot about melodies and some lyrics here and there too. So it's pretty collaborative like that.
Well, speaking on behalf of all bass players, thank you for actually taking on board your bass players' ideas for a song.
When I met Ollie, he was playing guitar in a band.
He's one of those guys. Okay, right. Okay.
Yeah. No, it just worked out that it'd work out best for him to jump on bass, and it's worked out really well. So yeah, he's doing a good job.
So he's doing the meme thing where, like, the guitarist that drew the short straw is basically playing bass. Even if that's the case, he's doing a good job. Yeah, man, the sick bass lines I like, and that tone that's coming through is pretty abrasive, but it's pretty standard of that kind of style of music. But yeah, it's got that whole very Dingwall-y, dark glass kind of vibe. Yeah, I don't know if I nailed that, but pretty sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Like, he's got a couple of Dingwall basses now, and we do use, so like, I think he's had like a dark glass B7K in the past, and we use neural DSP, parallax,
the Nolly get good stuff
in nerd like me and us. So yeah, that's kind of the sound. We're big fans of Nolly's bass tones. So yeah, makes sense.
They're pretty gnarly tones.
Yeah, 100%.
So speaking of tones, and this is one of the questions I want to bring up you as a guitarist, particularly a metal guitarist. Okay, I've got notes for this, so I have to go back to my notes. Where'd my notes go? I lost my notes. I know what I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
So, looking at guitar tones in metal or heavy music from basically the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s even, and now, the particular tone of distortion that has changed every single decade with a particular genre. Okay, so with your 70s, obviously your Black Sabbath and Zeppelin in that regard there too, which is still a very rock and roll tone, slightly more detuned. 80s, you got your hair metal coming through them, which is very Eddie Van Halen, scream at your face, full tube screamer, cranked and all that. When your 90s kicked in, you either had Dimebag Daryl style or Sepultura style, or you had the new metal phase coming through there, which clicked over into the 2000s. 2010s, you started seeing a shift in tone, but now the tone, that super compressed and gated tone. So I just want to know, like, if you can try and explain as to why the shift has happened. I'm curious with this evolution of guitar tone, because bass tone's pretty much stayed, apart from what we just discussed with the Nolly Get Good stuff and Dark Glass. Bass tone's pretty much stayed. It's bass.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, it is an interesting one. Like you said, bass kind of has a pretty specific role. So there's not heaps. It'll have some tweaks here and there in the mid range. In terms of how much distortion or something you want to put on it, and then you'll just have a bit of pick attack, and more or less that's about it.
Yeah.
With guitar tone, pretty wildly distortion and how much pick attack you want in there, and how upfront in the mix you want it to be, that kind of thing. I do think technology, especially recently, has played a big role. There's so much you can do on a computer with guitar tones now.
True.
You can get really creative, pretty much match it one for one through various methods in your computer, like in Pro Tools or Logic or whatever you're using. So someone kind of makes some kind of tweak that's a bit different, it's a bit outside the norm, and then people will be like, oh, that's new, that's exciting. I think that'll be a stepping stone in evolving guitar tone in a genre.
Because I think that sort of like the tone that we got now, that was kind of kickstarted by the likes of like Periphery and Tesseract and that, wasn't it?
Yeah, and a lot of those guys are just using like an Axe Effects, which is an amp modeling thing, or like I'm pretty sure Meshuggah have used the Line 6 stuff in the past, which is pretty infamous for being cheap and kind of nasty. But yeah, they've made it their own thing, and people seem to dig it. So it's not necessarily like the best and most expensive gear that makes itself known in certain circles. Even the cheap gear can become like cult classics, and it might be like $100 pedal that has now got $1,000 on the used market, that kind of thing. It's kind of interesting how it works.
The Bad Monkey or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was like a Digitech. Just an overdrive pedal that people have kind of caught on. Yeah.
Well, like I do know, like they're not in the metal scene, but they're more alternative as Biffy Clyro, and they actually, one of their staple pedals is a Metal Zone. Metal Zone, which is infamous for being a crap pedal, but apparently it's been used all this time the wrong way. It's got to go in front of the actual lineup instead of like at the end, right?
Yep. Yeah, I guess that's another thing, like using gear in maybe the way that wasn't intended, but you get some pretty interesting results, and it just becomes a thing.
All right, since you're a producer as well in that regard, and metal's one of the hardest things to actually try and produce because it's just so technical, how long do you spend on the drums?
Oh yeah, drums is a big one. We were lucky enough to with Chris Blancardo, who does a lot of engineering for Northlane and a lot of other cool bands. But he's kind of like the go-to drum guy for me. He lives in Sydney here, which is super convenient. Our drummer Seb, we went with him to Chris's studio, probably spent days, the 12 songs. And Seb's a great drummer. So he was able to smash that, and the tones were really good. Chris really knows what he's doing on the engineering side there. So we were pretty meticulous about it, especially because Chris does have a very good ear for it. Drum tuning, getting the right takes, getting the right sound in the room, and then once that was done, it was just the drums are relatively easy to work with because A, Seb is a great drummer, and B, they were recorded well with Chris. So
Hmm.
uh, while there is a lot of attention to detail, working with that team made it easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a pleasurable experience.
Good, because I know that when I've had to like produce and mix drums in the past myself, which I don't do anymore, I just use program shit. Um, I tore my hair
Yep.
out doing that, like comping and then basically making sure some things aren't out of
Yeah.
phase, and it was doing my head in. So I would never, me personally, would never ever do that again.
Which is definitely fair enough. Yeah, like I said, there was a lot of time spent on the details of it. Phase being a big thing. Chris moved a lot of microphones around to
Mm.
make sure things were sitting well. And then when you're putting it in a modern metal context in a mix, you're using both from the recording session and some other collections that you kind of throw on the drums and make them sound like you want to sound in a modern
Yeah,
metal mix. And having that all fit together is a bit of a challenge. But yeah, the guys were happy with it, so I'm happy.
sick. A great result, man. Like I said, the album's amazing. That whole it's not as, I wouldn't say it's as sexual as what Thornhill is, because you guys very similar sort of sound to Thornhill. Thornhill gives me more of like a Deftones
Mm.
sexual wise kind of vibe, whereas like I know you've name dropped The Weeknd as actually like a kind of an influence or reference in the sound as well as Spirit Box and that. But yeah, love that sound. Plus,
Yeah.
thank you for mentioning Loathe.
Yeah. Loathe are a big band for us. Yeah, for sure.
I only found out about him when I went to Good Things last year. I'd never heard of him before, and then I heard the vocals, went, oh shit, this is cool, and then I found out who they were. Oh, they're actually quite a big deal. I didn't even realize, I didn't know about them.
Yeah, Loathe are great. And I think everyone's hanging out for them. Talk actually show, and yeah, everyone's in heavy anticipation for it.
Mm.
But the last album was so good. So yeah, hanging out for it.
All right, we'll wrap things up here. So just do a quick rundown of the shows you got coming up. April 19th at Landsdowne in Sydney, Black Bear Lodge on April 20th, Jive Bar in Adelaide on April 25th, and winding the whole thing up at the Bandroom in Melbourne on April 27th. Mark, man, have an absolute ball on this tour. You guys deserve this headline thing, so have fun.
Man, yeah, thanks so much. It's been a good chat.
Yeah, hang on the line there, and I'll have a quick debrief with you. Everyone else, this has been Mark from Inertia. Adios. Made it through. Yeah, like I said, bit of a sketchy sort of connection there. So I'll do my best to make it all neat and tidy. Big thanks to Mark from Inertia jumping in. And if you did enjoy this podcast, people, do check out Second Shadow, because it's a ripper of an album. If you like stuff like Thornhill, if you like Spirit Box, Loathe, even Sleep Token, it'll be your jam. So yeah, do check it out and go see them on tour. I'll recap those dates right now. April 19th at Landsdowne Hotel in Sydney, Black Bear Lodge on April 20th in Brisbane, Jive Bar in Adelaide on April 25th, and the Bandroom in Melbourne on April 27th. I will put all the details, links to that sort of stuff in this podcast in either the audio or video versions. If you have enjoyed this podcast and previous ones and you have not subscribed, what the hell are you doing? Subscribe. It makes a difference. Please. It helps things. It really does. Till then, I got more coming up. So thank you for supporting local music, live music, Australian music, all sorts of music. I think I got there. You guys are legends.